Peace be upon you, my fellow programmers. In the last episode, as you can see it, adding get and get by ID method to a Spring Boot application. We have already the repo for the service which we are working on. Its address service. In the future, this address service will not be the only one. We will add another services and we'll have API gateway. It will be a huge microservice application with a real practical and actual code. So let's get into this episode. After adding the get by ID, how we implemented it? We implemented it in the controllers by adding a call to a service address service, and this get addresses are returning us a fixed piece of data. Usually, in the real application, you will not have something like a fixed piece of data like that. Somehow, you will have most of your applications coming from somewhere. You are in control and you need to control what kind of data and they are coming from where. So we will add in this episode a Spring data, Spring JPA data that will help us to communicate with actual and real database where we can manipulate the data in a real life, like real time, by adding data, getting data, because in the future it will be much difficult to just work and in Spring Web by adding put mapping, get post mapping, delete mapping on a dummy data like that. It will be much easier and it will be more practical. So let's get into the implementation. Here's the get application, the address application itself. I am listing the steps which you are usually following to implement Spring Data into a new services or even an existing service. First of all, you need to add the Spring Data Starter. Usually, I add test. So adding Spring Starter, it will be much simpler. But as a reminder, in the moment of recording this episode, we were using 3.3. It was a bit outdated, but now Spring is 3.5. It's always better to upgrade the version of your Spring or libraries to meet the newest one, even for security reasons, for some batch updating, for some vulnerabilities, it will be fixed. As you can see now, I don't have vulnerabilities except in a starter web. We will speak about the vulnerabilities and how to avoid them in the future episodes. Now let's add our Spring data. Adding application or adding library in boom.xml is so simple. First of all, we write dependency, and the dependency automatically will get us this to artifact ID, the first one artifact ID. So Spring, as you can even see, it's Spring Boot Starter Data JPA. That's IntelliSense is completing your code. I needed this one, and it's coming from Spring Boot. Now I have Spring data in my application. Congratulations. Your application now is ready to accept and to deal with database. Let's run to see what issue we will face because adding the Spring data itself is not enough, but there will be some issue. Let's look at it together. Okay, here we run the application, but it's failed. But why it's failing? It's failing because as failed to configure data source. There is no data source. What does it mean, data source? Means that our application is trying to communicate somehow with the database, but it cannot communicate with that database. Even consider the following. It's telling you what to do. Usually, when you run the application and you face error, please go into the console log. Read the log carefully. Maybe you will find the solution already within your log before jumping into the internet and trying to search for it. So I need to add some database. This is educational system. At the moment, we will use H2 database. H2 database is an embedded database. It's used only for testing purposes or development purpose, not in real application. So for that reason, let's add our H2. To add dependency, we put dependency and the application itself, it's called H2, the library, enter, and it's coming from com H2. So now we have H2 database. Let's refresh our boom and then address application. Run the address application once more and let's see what we will have in the console. Console is your friends. Now you can see it's already running, starting application, and everything is okay. Even you can see it here, database URL, GDBC, database driver, etc., etc. You have logs, you have information, go through them. And you can even see it here that you have Hikari add connection. There's a connection to the database which you have. It's already memory, H2, GDBC. Later on, when we speak about how can you configure different profiles to run your application, like development profile, production profile, etc., I will show you how can you have multiple databases in the same application, but each one of them is serving a specific profile. So now our application is running fine. I don't have any issue, but I still don't have any communication with database. I don't have records. I don't have tables. I have nothing. For that reason, if we check here our address application, already we added the starting, so done. We added the required database, done. We run the application, done. Now let's add repository interface. What's mean repository interface? We would like to deal with the database. We'd like to do some operation, create, read, update, delete. All this operation is done on the database. To do that, we need some class to communicate. So we will add a package, and this package, we will call it repository package. Within this repository package, I will add a new Java interface. I will call it address repository. Okay, but it is interface. I will tell you why it is interface in a moment. Interface always extending another interface. So extends, we will use JPA repository. Here in JPA repository, you will find T is mean entity. Which entity you are going to use? T, the entity in our case is the address. ID is what kind of ID, what is the data type of ID you are using. In our case, in the address, if we check the address, we use UUID as address. So Control C, and we added it here. Now, that's it. As a developer now, you don't need to write any custom query for the basic CRUD operation like get, delete, update, save, all this, etc. It's already implemented under the hood for you. How can you know that? If we check, if we would like to check the implementation of JPA repository, you can just press Control and click. Now you get into the repository. Here JPA repository extending already list CRUD, extending other. You can even see it here, save and flush, save all. But because it's already extending other applications, you can even double check. Let's take CRUD repository. It's still here, find all by ID. You keep going, you will go to the basics one, which CRUD repository, and save, find, existing. All of that already implemented under the hood for you. All what you need to do, you just provide, and you will get what you're looking for. Implementing repository at the end. It's empty interface. We call it like a marker interface. So we don't need all of that. Now you already saw under the hood that your address repository has access to all the basics and the important methods to deal with database. But in this case, our address, it will not be recognized inside the JPA system. Why? Because there is nothing here to identify this address as an entity. But why do you need to identify this address as an entity? Because you have a mapping process. If you remember from Java DBC, Java database connectivity, that address here is a Java entity, but in database it will be stored as a record. So you would like that when you return the data from the database, you will have this ID as a record, and you want to map it like UUID, ID equal, and the address, the corresponding column from the database. If you would like to dive deep into how this stuff working, I will leave in the description below a JDBC course for Java, or at least you can read about it. So anyway, we would like to tell Java Spring Data that this address is used as an entity. So I'm telling it this is one is entity. That's it. Now your address will be recognized as entity. If you would like to give a custom name or table, you have a custom table, you can add a table, and this table annotation will, you can define some parameters, some constraints regarding the table, regarding the database itself, the underlying of the database that you would like to deal with. I will give it a name like the same address. So that's it. But for each table, you know that you need a unique ID. You need something to be the primary key of the database. So we have UUID as our ID. So here we are going to annotate it as ID. That's it. Now your database is completely ready and your entity address entity is ready to communicate with the database. So we how many we achieved? Okay, we added already the model, we added the entity, we added the table, we added the ID. Now the last one is to run the application once more to check if everything works fine or not. Let's run. Great, our application started. I don't have any issue, but oh my God, I don't see any effect of my change. How can I see where is the data, what I added, where to get that from, and all this stuff? That's what we are going to do in the next episode. So stay tuned. Next one, it will be the implementation of this address repository into the address service. Here we are going to call the actual data, not the fake data which we have them here. So please stay tuned and subscribe. If you would like to save a like, to share the episode with others, please go ahead. So see you next episode. Thank you so much for your time and watching.